Wait, what was the question again?
Should I move up a little? Okay.
Can I think for just a sec?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, every day is really, really different.
Every day we learn something new.
And every day sometimes you make a new friend.
The most amazing thing I've ever done at school
We get to dissect an owl pellet.
is read a chapter book.
This was like a quadruple step equation because it had 2 double step equations.
One day in gym class I hit a home run.
Yes, I did it!
I was jumping up and down just like I ate 1,000 Skittles.
When one student comes in and says, I can't, it's our job to prove that they can.
I think something extraordinary happens every day in public schools just by its mere existence.
There's always something to look forward to, something special going on.
The challenges, the cooperations, the teamwork.
Really, it's the foundation to everything anybody wants to do.
Try new things, expand your comfort zone, and do things you never otherwise imagined doing.
Every day, my education makes a difference in my life.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from your hopefully restful spring break. So it's time to get back to work, roll up your sleeves, and finish out this last leg. And what we've had so far has been a great school year. So thank you for all that you do, and welcome to our April 11th regularly scheduled board work session. I don't guess we have any visitors in the room. We have our usual people who love what they do at the library, Mr. Alan Harkness, and at the museum, Mary Ann Rickner. Thank you for joining us as always. Public agenda, we do not have anyone signed up. We do have this public agenda item on each of our meetings, whether it's a work session or a regular scheduled board meeting. It's for the public. Anyone who wishes to speak to the Board of Education would follow the channels to do so, which is located on our website, and that is, of course, notify Ms. Karen Jones and put in the request after you have gone through the channel of visiting with your school or the superintendent's office. We will move into our Education Committee. Ms. Buckner.
And that concerns our strategic planning. And who will speak to that?
Strategic flavor.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
Good evening, Patrick Knopf, Director of Research Accountability and Assessment.
The state has asked that districts that have a strategic waiver amend their contract with the state to add an additional 2 years due to the fact that we did not have assessment and accountability data. So what you have here is attached is the addendum that the state actually sent us. So that's their language. That's the form they wanted in. And if you guys approve, we'll get it signed and get it up there to get the contract amended. It extends the contract out until June 2024. It would have expired this summer. So it just adds 2 years to the contract. Any other questions?
I just have one question. I know that we've already approved these waivers, but can we get a list or do you know off the top of your head what those waivers consist of?
Off the top of my head, I do not because it's very extensive, but we can certainly get you a copy of everything that's been waived, including class size waivers, all those things like that. So yes, it's quite extensive, but we can get that for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that concludes our education committee. Are there any other questions? All right, next we have Ms. Tillery, policy.
Yes, I would like to present 4.01, the board policy DJEE, local purchasing. Okay, that'd be great.
Am I good? Yes. Okay, so this kind of shows the policy as it stands now. I know Mr. Cantrell brought this up, and it's come up a couple of times of just whether or not we give any preference or show something towards local businesses. So we are pulling the policy out to take a look at it and get thoughts. So my thoughts, and again, forgive me, spring break, I probably hadn't been as ahead of this as I should, would be to gather input from others in the next probably even month. I'm thinking really more put a policy forward in May that would then sit for 30 days and be adopted in June if we decide to make a change. Does that sound good? Okay. Because, I mean, we usually let them sit for 30 days. I don't know that by next Monday we might have real clarity, had a chance for legal counsel to review any changes we might want to make. So what I'm asking now in conjunction with Ms. Tillery is if other board members want to take a look and kind of give me their thoughts on what might be some good parameters or some guidelines of how we could, you know, if things are equal or close to equal. Right now, if things are dead equal, then a local company could get some preference. But, you know, my thought, and I think Mr. Cantrell's brought to and others have brought up too, is that even if it's close, we would like to, within a margin, be able to give them preference. So we're going to look at the policy in light of that.
Sounds good.
So please send me any thoughts and feedback. This is what we already have. We haven't even proposed a draft yet.
Okay.
That's
what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I was reading about.
So we're putting out current now to kind of get some thoughts. And my thought is it would really be, we are in April, right? It would be May by the time we really had a draft to put out, and then everybody could, and then sit for 30 days, and if we do approve it in June.
Okay, so that's what we've been talking about the whole time. Okay,
Yeah.
Trying to make it give some kind of preferential, and that is legal. Chambers.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think it's a great idea to look at the policy. I would request, of course, that we get legal counsel to look over this policy. I know we revised all of our policies in 2017 alongside with Harbison and Hartley, I believe. And so if we could have them also comment on changing this policy, because I know they helped us draft this in 2017. And so I know that we definitely want to give preference to local bidders, but we also want to make sure we're following federal and state guidelines when we are sort of making preferences. So if we could have both of those attorneys sort of look at it, since they helped us draft this original in 2017. Yeah.
Based on some of the feedback we got from our attorney. My only input on this is, you know, we were asked, do we have justification? Because you have to have some justification for, you can't just, you know, it can't be arbitrary, there has to be a reason, makes sense. So my justification in my mind, because I applaud this effort, is that, and seriously, I don't think I was taken very seriously when I suggested it last time. Seriously, there is benefit to the, to our carbon footprint on being able to select local vendors. I don't know what value you can put on that, but I think that there's probably a value out there for, you know, every mile you're separated from your vendor and you in a purchase costs money. So I think that you can put an actual value on local participation based on that carbon benefit, carbon footprint benefit.
No, that's a very good perspective. I would just ask if you will email it to me. So. And Ms. Chambers, if you'll remind me too in an email, just because, sorry, I don't even have a pen out right now. Yeah, thank you.
Also, I think that it's important to also emphasize to anybody who's doing business locally, I cannot think of the name where they can get on the state bid list. Geez. I can't either, and I should know, but. They can, and that's for our neighbors in Phoenix City, because when you start talking about local, what is local? When you start talking about the footprint, how wide is this footprint if we're just talking about Muscogee County? And that's the man who has the answer. He just walked in the door, but I don't want to put him on the spot. But this, they're already vetted out and they're already competitive, and it costs them absolutely nothing. And Muscogee County is a participant with this. Mr. Joseph, what's the name of the
state bid?
So for the sake of time, I will think of it in a second, and then I will digress. But I was trying to think of the program that we participate in with the state of Georgia, where local businesses can participate. It costs them absolutely nothing. If you hit something, then I'll know what I'm doing. Okay, there you go. Can you think of it?
Not off the top of my head, off your description. So I'm not too sure if you're just talking about the vendors, local vendors having the ability to go ahead and register with the state as a vendor.
Yes,
and then through that, they can actually have bidder submissions at that level. So I believe that's what you're speaking about.
I'm speaking of that, but it does have a particular name, and we'll between Ms. Chambers and I, we'll figure it out in a minute. But thank you, though. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that is also an option, regardless of what size the business is. They can get on that listing, and Muscogee County can do business with them. So I would also encourage them, local businesses, to participate.
And there's also the consortium. For example, buy board would be considered.
Buy board, that's it.
Okay. All right. As you kept explaining, I was like, okay, I think I know what you're talking about now. But yeah, buy board is one of the consortiums that you can actually participate with.
Buy board.
Yeah.
Buy board.
Yeah, buy board, and then there's a couple of others that are out there. It's one word. B-U-Y, buy board. Yeah, it's the New York accent. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that costs them absolutely nothing, and if they needed some emergency work or copying or plumbing or paper clips or tire or whatever, nice little, don't have to go through all the other processes.
And it is also one of our exceptions, so it is listed as a board policy exception as well.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I put you on the spot and you survived. Thank you, I appreciate that.
I think that's it.
I think, is that all? All right. Next, we have our Personnel Committee. 5.01 is the hard-to-fill school initiative that we voted on last month. And I wanted us to review it again because I'm not sure if everyone was aware of the revision that was on there. It is going to, we said all, and all of the presentations, all was mentioned who would benefit from this. However, on the revision, it is excluding the principals and the assistant principals. So the schools who have been identified as hard to fill, the principal and assistant principal who will be there driving that work will not benefit from the stipend. And I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. If we want to call it back and make it an action item, it's just for the hard to fill, those hard to fill schools. Okay, Ms. Button.
I want to know the rationale for that, for the principals and the assistants not being a part of the reward system.
So my rationale for that was simply this, that when you talk about in purest sense of hard to fill, we do not have difficulty filling principal and assistant principal vacancies in any of our schools, to include the hard to fill schools. We did say in my presentation when I spoke, and I apologize if there was confusion, but in my presentation last week, I talked about, or last month, I mentioned about the teachers and support staff. So I did mention it. But in the interest of creating whatever's decided is fine. I just found from the standpoint of, whereas teachers and support staff can transfer, can move from one place to another, one thing or another, whereas principals and assistant principals, typically it's a privilege to get to a position like this, was the feeling that, now again, they couldn't qualify for all the others, but my thinking was from the rationale that hard to fill, those are not, by definition, are not hard to fill positions in our schools. However, you know, I'm sure we could attract more if that's something the board wants to do. I'm certainly open to that if that's something, but that was the rationale.
What was it again now? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get it.
A principal and assistant principal apply and then are appointed to a position.
Appointed, okay.
And they don't typically transfer unless we transfer them. They can't apply for transfers. We don't have that process in our district. Versus teachers, guidance counselors, paraprofessionals, secretaries, other support staff, they have that ability. So just by definition from my perspective, hard to fill was the fact that the principal and assistant principal they apply for, they know the jobs, and then they are in those jobs, and they don't typically get transferred unless they choose to leave the district. I mean, that's something that is always an option for any employee, obviously, but that's the rationale behind that.
Are there any questions? I just wanted to make sure that we understood that. My issue is that it was presented as all, and that's what I thought I was voting on, that all of the employees would benefit from the stipend. And also, I think it's, from my perspective, everybody is assigned who works in the Muscogee County School District. And it does not seem to make any sense that for morale purposes, that the people who will be responsible for bringing those schools from those different levels where they're qualified in the state programming to not benefit from some type of stipend if they're leading this effort. So that's my issue with that it changed, it was revised, it was prevented, and then it was revised. And I just wanted to make sure each and every one of us was aware of the revision and whether or not we want to consider it again.
I actually don't quite understand the rationale of it, but if it's the will of the board, I can go either way. But I heard the explanation, but I still don't understand the rationale. I don't quite get the rationale of it, because whether they are at a building or not, they are still beholden to the building, and they are part of the effort. As a matter of fact, they are in fact leading the effort, even though they don't have even though they can't transfer in and out as other personnel can. Typically, most people at a school, they have the prerogative to transfer. But in the course of transferring, it'd probably be 10% of people transferring at a school. Now, I just threw out that figure. I know it's not 50%, but I know it's not all the time that we're transferring. But it just seems to me that if you have one effort, that's been driven. And the head of that effort is the principal and the assistant principals. They are the driving force, driving the effort. As far as I'm concerned, it just seems to me, and like I said, I'm just one person. It seems to me that they should be participating in that also.
As a point of clarity, just to make sure we all have it right, the principals and the assistant principals still, they can still participate in the stipends for the exiting performance.
Yes.
So they are already getting that, and 2 out of those 3 schools are on those lists and would qualify for that stipend.
That's correct.
The hard to fill, and I don't remember what was said at the meeting, but I remember asking Dr. Lewis as a side that question because I thought it was interesting. People were getting appointed to those schools as we were about to do that. And his answer made sense to me, that they do get appointed to that school. They do kind of stay there based on the will of administration, and that whereas the staff and teachers are putting in possibly for transfers, and they are making a conscious decision to stay at those schools and thus getting the stipend to keep those schools. So I'm fine with it the way it's
Well, I just want to clarify one more thing too, is it was in the presentation and it was down in some of the verbiage and that kind of thing. And like I said, I did mention in my comments about the fact that it was teachers and support personnel, all that aside. When I look at the pool of assistant principals we have and the pool of principals we have, that's what I look at. When I look at teachers going to some of our hard-to-fill schools, I'm trying to be true. When I made the recommendation, I was being true to what I felt like was the definition of hard-to-fill. Getting teachers and instructors, counselors, that sort of thing. It has not been traditionally hard to find a principal or an assistant principal to go to a position of leadership. That said, again, with the whole culture of creating I was just trying to be consistent with the definition of hard to fill. If the board as a whole feels like the creating is for everybody, which I can certainly support that since I was one of the initiators of that concept, I'm fine with that too. But I just want to be true to the true concept of what hard to fill was when the recommendation was made.
Okay, so that I understand it, it hasn't been changed. It's still as you made the recommendation.
Right.
Okay, so.
From the work session in March and the board meeting in March, it was the same.
It's still the teachers and support staff.
Yes,
Okay.
at this time.
And I can support that. I mean, I also support the need for complete transparency and clarity in case anything was said at this table to make sure. I can understand the rationale simply because principals and assistant principals, they are a unique part of the leadership team. Where educators, what's hard to fill at these schools are the teachers and the support staff. It's not the principals and assistant principals. Those are leadership. I think that's kind of where you truly see the mettle of a leader is sometimes in a hard to fill school. And I think a lot of leadership I've dealt with in hard to fill schools, because we have several in District 7, is that they see that as an opportunity for growth and to expand. But I think as far as retention and recruitment, which is the actual purpose of this incentive, I could support either, but I understand the rationale of restricting it for financial reasons to the teachers and support staff, which are really, truly hard to fill, if that makes any sense.
Ms. Chambers?
I just want to add my 2 cents, and either way, I agree with Kathy, either way works for me, but I do think, Dr. Lewis, in the spirit of as you just stated earlier, that it may be beneficial to include the principals and assistant principals because the stipend of $1,000 or $3,000 is a small amount, and it's almost a token to say, we appreciate you, we understand that there's some difficulties going on at the school, and we're showing appreciation. So in that regard, I think it would be great to include everyone. In the presentation that we originally looked at, it does say current employees and new hires, and it doesn't specify whether it's administration or not. If it is a budgetary thing, then I do understand that, but I would think that everyone should be included in the sort of initiative. So that's my 2 cents.
Sure. When, Dr. Lewis, when you went back and defined what hard to feel, the definition of hard to feel, I understand what you're saying now, because the principals applied for the jobs. They wanted it. It's not hard to feel for them because it was a position that they want, and they want to keep it. So, you know, they want to be a principalship. So it's not hard to feel for them. At the same time, I think that, I don't know, the budgetary parameters or considerations that you considered in there, I don't know if that was a major factor in your consideration not to include the principals and the assistant principals. I don't know how that impacted your decision, but because I would have to know that, because basically I still continue to think that they should have all the privileges as the other employees, but I don't know all of your thinking, but I do understand that now. When you went back and said it's not hard to fill, the principalships are not hard to fill. There's people just dive in all kind of applications y'all get to fill those principalships, you know. So that's not a hard to fill position. So I understand that now, but that's just my thinking. I can go either way, but I think that I don't know what your rationale there. Was it a budgetary thing, or
what's the budgetary impact?
$48,000.
For now, but if we eventually roll it out to all hard-to-fill schools, it will be more.
Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Go ahead now.
I think, you know, right now it's only 3 schools that were chosen to be part of this pilot. It is not all hard-to-fill schools. We have other schools that are hard to fill, that are in high school or elementary school, that are not part of this pilot. So my concern is, you know, we have already selected these 3 to get additional funds to see if this helps so that we can roll it out to more. You know, by giving it to these principals and assistant principals at these 3 schools, 2 of which are also getting the exiting school list, whatever, stipend, you know, to me, it would make, if I was a principal of one of our hard-to-fill schools in elementary school, go, well, why didn't I get to be part of this pilot? Now I'm not getting some of that money too. I think we're causing a lot more kind of discrepancy in what was supposed to, you know, got picked 3 schools, but it's not all of our hard-to-fill schools. I'd feel better about it if it was all of our hard-to-fill schools, but again, this is a pilot for just 3 of them. That we are hoping to see how it performs and then could be rolled out to more.
Yeah, I would hope that in the planning and presentation of this, that the total impact of all of our hard-to-fill schools were considered and the cost of doing that. If we're rolling out with a pilot, that means we have some intention of addressing all of the hard-to-fill schools. Surely this is not a one-off.
No.
Okay, so I would like to think that you all did some kind of planning and anticipating a cost out and supporting all of the hard-to-fill schools. I just need to believe that.
Well, you'd be right.
Okay, so saying that, then surely you, in your planning, you cost out all, as you presented initially at the at the retreat, and also it was said all. There was no correction made. The revision was on there. I did not go back and look at it. First of all, let me just say, that feature on board docs that lets us know there's been a change or revision to the agenda, I need y'all to turn it back on.
Well, first of all, there was no change there was never a change to the agenda.
Okay.
Never.
But our language did not match what was revised, because it says revised on the document. Our language was not matching that, and we were saying all. So that's how we got it back on here, because I was not aware. That's why I wanted to make sure that every single other person on
I
this,
just want to
at
be
this
very
board
clear that
table.
nothing changed from the work session to the board vote. Nothing
Now,
has changed.
Mrs. Chambers just read what was at the work session.
But anyway,
No,
And
let me finish.
It said all employees. It did not take off anybody. It didn't say principals. Ms. Chambers just read that, and it said all employees. It just lumped employees together.
But I just want to know that budgetarily, you all prepared to take care of all of the hard-to-fill schools. And we're not going to be figuring it out along the way because we have, did you picture?
Presently, we need to know about the assistant principals and the principals, okay?
There is a sustainability plan under Title II funds for the school-based positions in order for us to be able to continue this past the exhaustion of the ESSER funds. It's been implemented as a part of the full strategy for the next 2.5 years. So we'd be working with Dr. Tim Smith and other teaching and learning and HR representatives to make sure that it's sustainable past that point. So yes, there is a plan to make it sustainable, and also, as mentioned, to implement a merit-based program depending on how the performance evaluations and those parameters are set up. So there is that's kind of why we needed it to be a pilot, in all honesty, in order for us to collect the data and be able to have a large enough measuring group, but not too large that would cause confusion.
So in your planning, were you all planning budgetarily for all of the employees, including the leadership of the school?
Yes, we were. Well, from my perspective, the thought process was all employees in order for us to implement school improvement plans and also district improvement plan models for the performance component of the pilot.
Right. So is that yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So in the pilot, so hopefully we're piloting something to make them not hard to fill schools. So as we collect data, what do we do? These are our first 3 schools, and we're doing this for 3 years. So at the end, because I'm just speculating, because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of 3 years, but we're thinking that we're probably going to add, and then we're going to review the data, and we're going to analyze whether these incentives, the various incentives, have made a difference in terms of the improvement and the behavior, and we'll see if these schools are no longer hard to fill, as hard to fill, or we're trying to see if these incentives make any difference.
Exactly. Proof of concept.
Proof of concept. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of when you're doing like you said, Title II is going to help us on down the road. And so at the end of the year, do we get stuck? Maybe if there's no improvement, if we redo the data, we analyze test scores, we find that it's still hard to, these are hard to fill. Do we continue the hard to fill on these and add other schools, or are we thinking about?
Absolutely. So the thought process was to see how the first year goes regarding the measuring components, and then if it is successful, or to be able to collect data to reduce any gaps. So let's say that there is a school that may still not be experiencing what the proposal was intended to do, then we'd be partnering with them more intentionally and continuing to conduct focus groups and surveying, since it would be something being done with everybody in that building. So the hope is definitely to create a marketing brand in order to be able to share this within Georgia and outside of Georgia for different types of positions, in addition with the relocation stipend, so it ties in so we could really close schools on an offer for someone within Georgia and outside of Georgia. We've already been partnering with the print shop to create some new pamphlets and marketing material for our recruitment practices that we'll be also sharing with the schools, in addition to continue to expand our recruitment strategies for the next school year. So I'm very hopeful that the sustainability plan, and in addition to the strategy to make it successful, is going to be, to your point, it's going to be imperative, but it's going to be successful for our schools to be successful.
Thank you.
I just had one additional comment. I definitely support the use of the ESSA funds for this particular initiative, but I do want to stress once again, I think I said this at the retreat, the hard-to-fill schools are hard to fill for a reason, and I think we need to take a close look at the reasons they are hard to fill and try to provide the support needed for those schools, whether that's additional counselors, whether it's additional resource teachers, things of that nature. I think we really need to take a hard look at the why and try to fix the problem permanently and not just sort of put a Band-Aid on it. Just my perspective.
If I may,
And that's why I was just saying, and that's why the leadership is so important. The leadership who's going to be driving the school and driving the whole entire effort, because now there's, you know, we're focusing on the financial part, but actually the financial part is to drive the effort. The financial part is an incentive. What we are focusing on is what Ms. James has said, the improvement of the school. We're focusing on making the school meet its goals as a school. And the financial part, these are incentives to do that. And so, and the persons who are driving this effort, the person in charge, is the principal. The principal and the assistant principal and his administrative staff. These are the people who are driving the effort to make for these schools to improve, which is why I think that they should be part of the financial incentives too. I don't know if we need to vote on something, or if I know we're having a discussion. So I know as we do, it seems like to me this would need some kind of action, you know.
All right, superintendent is asking for a consensus. What are we gonna, are we reviewing or do we need to take any action? Review. We need a consensus. Are we gonna leave it as a review, or do we want to take action on reconsidering including the principals and the assistant principals? Action. Ms. Chambers, Mr. Cantrell, Dr. Slide, Ms. Tillery. Review. Ms. Chambers.
I should be able to give a simple answer, shouldn't I? I definitely think that it was necessary for us to review. I think if we want to include the principal and assistant principals, we need to ask Dr. Lewis to go back and sort of look at that and bring us more information. Because, well, what I'm saying is we usually vote on the recommendation that comes from the superintendent. So what I'm saying is, just for a matter of protocol, if we think they should be included, then perhaps we need to ask him to look at this initiative again, because if he's listening to his board members, then we're saying we think that your principals and your assistant principals should be included in this particular initiative. we're asking them to do additional work because it says the administration will collect data from the pilot program. Or is that you? Okay. Okay, sounds good. But I'm just saying, if we had to vote and you were asking me today, would you be in support of just the teachers and employees or include everyone? My vote is to include everyone.
That's what I voted for.
I just think that that's not what we were, originally I thought that was what we were asked to vote on. So I still think that we give to Dr. Lewis our recommendation that the principal and assistant principal needs to be included, and let him bring back the recommendation, if he's amenable to that, with including the principals and assistant principals, and then we vote on that.
Just it seems to me that, Kathy, it seems to me that if we, I was next. It seems to me that what we have done right now, if there's only 3 people who want to bring it back, so there is no consensus to.
Well, I haven't heard from everybody. I'm waiting on.
Can I have my point?
Hold on one sec, let me finish getting this consensus.
Well,
Ms. Tillery.
I'd like to give my reasoning for my opinion.
All right.
And that is, there is a reason that this is called a pilot. That is to gather the data based on the response, to bring back the potential expansion or dissolving it. And I think that the focus is on trying to fill the positions that are hard to fill. Superintendent and the Chief of Human Resources has made it clear to us that those positions are the teachers and administration. I think it's great that we all love our principals and assistant principals, but that's not the purpose of a pilot. If this were to come back to us based on the data, and the superintendent was to say, this has been a roaring success, and we think we need to expand it to every single one of our hard-to-fill schools, at that point, I think we need to look, all right, exactly what positions do we want to include? But for these 3 schools to serve as a pilot, I am going to support the recommendation as it was apparently made to us, which was for us to use it to gather the data on the truly hard-to-fill positions, which are teachers and administration.
Thank you, ma'am.
Teachers and support.
Dr. Slide.
I think we should do exactly what our superintendent says he wants to do.
Gotcha. Ms. Tillery.
I think that we should do what was recommended for the hard-to-fill positions.
Gotcha.
Now, the success of a pilot, according to what we're discussing now, it doesn't have anything, it's not based on whether we have, in my opinion, it should be based on whether the principals, in my opinion, it would be more successful if the principals and assistants were included. But to Kathy's point that this is a pilot, it seems like you were saying that the success of it doesn't have anything to do with whether the principals or the assistant principals are included in the pilot. I mean, I don't see how, according to this pilot, how the benefit, according to where it is, the inclusion of the principals and assistant principals are so impactful to the success of the pilot. In my opinion, if the incentives were extended to the principals and the assistants, then to me, in my opinion, that would have impact on the success of the pilot. But when you say that the thing that Dr. Lewis has said, which does make sense to me now, that the assistant principals and the principals, those positions are not hard to fill.
So my logic behind it is if the principal left, you would have another principal immediately ready to take that position. If another teacher left, you would not have a row of teachers waiting to fill that position. So by definition of hard to fill, that's why I'm supporting it going to teachers and staff, because if 4 principals left, he would have resumes that day for a principal and a vice principal position. But he's not going to have resumes for teachers.
That's what I was saying.
I'm just
That's
simply going
hard to
by the
fill.
definition of hard
Yeah.
to fill
Hard to
only.
fill, that's what we're saying, the heart, as I was saying.
All right.
But I also think that they should be included in the pilot.
And
All
going
right.
forward, we'll certainly take that under consideration as we expand the pilot. I hope it is a roaring success.
All right, we have discussed this item. Now, I just wanted to make sure that what we were saying matched what we voted on. We were saying all, but we weren't voting on all. And we are going to keep it as the superintendent has recommended, with his revision to exclude the principals and assistant principals and only focus on the hard-to-fill schools and evaluate the three hard-to-fill schools that were selected for the pilot, and then he'll bring us back an update. All right. The next item is 5.02. Superintendent is recommending Ms. Monique Williams to serve as principal at Midland Academy. Attached is Ms. Williams' resume. Good name. 5.03. The superintendent is recommending Dr. Keisha Cook to serve as principal at Midland Middle School. That screen was just rolling. I was trying to make it stop. 5.04, the superintendent is recommending Mr. Samuel Brown to serve as the assistant principal at Rainey McCullough School of the Arts. 5.05, the recommendation is for Kenneth Hample to serve as assistant principal at George Washington Carver High School. 5.06, the recommendation is to appoint Kelvin Smith to serve as assistant principal at Hardaway High School. And then our standard personnel reports are attached at the last item, 5.07. Do you have any questions about any of the attachments or any comments about the superintendent's personnel recommendation or the personnel report? Ms. Buckner.
Which means as we progress, I know when in our pilot for the hard-to-fill schools, as we progress during the 3 years, and I know we're going to be checking point to point all the way through, that we, as we go through these, that we come up with another definition of hard-to-fill school, what hard-to-fill means. I know we do have, we're thankful to you, very good, everything is great, you're wonderful. But as we move on the next 3 years, maybe we can even make a more succinct definition of hard-to-fill and who would qualify.
Okay. All right. That concludes our personnel report. Dr. Slide, Discipline Committee has an item.
Yes, ma'am. This is the time of year that we do this every year. We are preparing the document for a final vote in a month's time. And between now and that time, I think anybody that has serious interest in changing anything needs to get with it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last year already.
I didn't understand the question.
Dr. Ward?
Well, I was scrolling through it and I didn't see any changes.
This is the revised copy. This isn't last year's document, right?
Do we have a red line version? Yes. Okay, sorry, the one I opened, I guess it wasn't. Okay.
You got it?
Yep.
No, I think we answered it.
All right. Next is the Property Committee, Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll do the 7.01 is the museum report. And it is attached, but I do want to make sure that everyone knows we are preparing for 2 major exhibitions that will open in the next few months. One is on Alma Thomas. Everything is beautiful. It is opening July the 1st. and Sand Unshaken, the origin story of Alma Thomas, which is opening on May the 21st. And we want to thank everyone. The museum is thanking the Muscogee County School District and all the citizens for the e-splash, because that is the only reason we're able to do these exhibits. Okay, that's the museum report. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to 7.02, which is the library report, and it is attached. And I know you can read it, but I do want to bring up one point. Starting in April this month, the library will check out self-monitoring blood pressure kits. This is through a partnership with the local chapter of the American Heart Association and funding by TSIS, AFLAC, and St. Francis. These kits will come with a cuff, electronic monitor, a health guide, and assistance to find. Okay, if you need any assistance, please see your local library. Each Muscogee library will have 3 kits to check out, and you can actually keep them for 30 days with 1 renewal. So I think that is something unique that you wouldn't typically find at the library. And any questions, board members? Okay, hearing none, that concludes the property committee. And I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Buckner?
No, I just want to comment on the great things that our library and our museum, with our citizenry, we are so proud of our library and our museum.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Cantrell, construction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to the Construction Committee. 8.01 contract award to Don Jones Construction. During the April 19, 21 board meeting, the board approved Neil Kendist and Murray Architects to design and bid the 4 classroom additions and renovations of Matthews Elementary School. The bids came in with Don Jones Construction being the low bid. This bid amount plus a 5% owner's contingency will bring the overall project to $1,767,000, $147.90. Any questions on that? That's for Matthews Elementary. No questions. We move to next. 802, Construction Manager, Ben Gordy Construction. During the February 22nd, 22 board meeting, the board approved the construction delivery method of construction manager at risk for the renovation of projects at Brewer, J.D. Davis, Key, Lonnie Jackson, Rothschild, and Winton Arts Academy. The request for proposed process has been completed, and the contractor has been evaluated and being recommended. Ben Gordy Construction is being recommended to work on the Lonnie Jackson Academy and Rothschild Middle School. Any questions? If not, move down to the next one. 8.03, Construction Manager is River City Contracting. Approve River City Contracting as Construction Manager for renovations at Brewer, J.D. Davis, and Key Elementary School. Any questions?
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I have questions actually on all 3. So I have a couple questions. I have a question and then a request. So my question on these, so I'm used to generally getting a little more detail than just one proposing firm's score. Is there a reason why there's nobody else on here that was scored? No proposals, nothing?
Proposals submitted, that was the environment we live in, that was the proposals that were submitted, so it was scoring that one company.
Okay, and that's on all 3 of these. We had one person that submitted a proposal, and that is the individual that got recommended.
That is correct.
Okay, so my next request is a little more detail on how we went about our request for proposals, because that's a little unusual, albeit I understand that the construction industry right now is a little bit in turmoil, just from everything. I know a lot of contractors that are pulling back from contracting because there's so much uncertainty. If that's the reason, that's fine, but I would like some detail in what process we went through for the RFPs. And then my second request, irregardless of how many people, I hate that word, regardless of whether or not anyone else submitted a proposal, I would like to know when you make a recommendation if that contracting firm has done business for this district previously. And like, Ben Gordy has performed for the district at this school, just a little bit of context on capacity.
Sure.
Again, for the absolute same reason, in that the contracting industry right now is a little bit in turmoil, and I know contractors are pulling back. So I would like to know if these three, who are the only ones that made a proposal to us, have ever done business for us before.
Okay, so the answer is yes, they have done business with us before, and we will add that to future documentation.
I think it would be helpful.
Okay, the process that we follow is a standard process. We put it to the state procurement website for 28 days and our local website, advertise for 28 days and receive these responses. So we follow.
So I know that there are times when we have difficulty or we don't get as many proposals back as we would like, and so then we pick up the phone and we call a couple contractors and we say, hey, did you see this?
Absolutely, and we do that too. Not only do we post it, but we pick up the phone and call, so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
My question, and I'm very good at telling you what I don't know, and I'll say I don't know because it might be a dumb question. But as Ms. Williams has pointed out, since it's only one, did we set a parameter from a budget point of view, or are we having to kind of take what they're telling us because we only had one?
No, we set the parameter. We set the parameter of the budget for the project, and then also identified the scope that we want. So we went out and we met with the, being as the construction manager at risk, we met with the architect, and now that the CM will come on board, we'll go out there and do either a scope evaluation of what we've already identified to see if we can stay in budget. So we either will have to do a value engineer or a scope reduction or something along those lines. But we define what the work that we wanted done at these for the renovations.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Ward, let me ask you this. You've got three different companies there, and each company bidded for each job. Why did not these three companies bid for all three jobs? What would have been the reason why?
That they just, the jobs that they bid for, the manpower that they had was to cover what they had.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's stretching right now.
Okay.
Yep. And the scope of the project, but it's for the manpower.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions on 803? 804 is an update on the HVAC project at Jordan Vocational High School, College and Career Academy. The approved budget for this project was $6,319,000. Came from the FY17 application, expired, and the board approved a resolution to withdraw the F17 application during the March 15, 21 board meeting. The construction department reapplied during the FY23 application window and received updated bids for the completion of the HVAC work. Any questions on this?
Under the previously approved budget. We don't hear that much these days, so thank you.
Wonders never cease.
And if you look down at 8.05, construction status report. Mr. Anderson, you going to report on it?
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
We have a slideshow that we're going to go through. It's not pictures. Remember, we do our picture slideshows are an odd month, so we did one last month. We'll do pictures again next month. In order to help understand our monthly report on our construction, we wanted to share with you how we're responding to inflation. As we know, inflation is something. As we know, inflation is something, thank you. As we know, inflation is something that is impacting all of us. It is something that's definitely impacting us in construction, and we are really appreciative of our partners, with our vendors. They're working with us because all of our projects are budget-based. And so we make sure that we remain within the constraints of the budget, even though we're dealing with inflation. So our response to inflation is a part of our strategic planning and construction. There are three primary things that we do in this order in order to make sure that we're remaining within the budget: value engineering, scope reduction, and project redesign. And that is the order in which we go through the process. Some definitions for you. Value engineering is essentially, we are trying to make sure that we are meeting the scope of the project, the intended purpose of the project, but staying within the same lowest cost. So we're working with our vendors to make sure that we're reducing where we can in order to make sure that we're staying within budget. Scope reduction means that we are actually changing the scope of the project in order to stay within budget. Project redesign is because there is such a significant amount over budget that we need to completely reconsider what the project includes, and so we can stay within budget. Because remember, all of our projects are budget-based, and we make sure that we're always within budget. Scope reduction and project redesign will come back to the board for review. Value engineering is something that we do all the time, and so it's a part of our strategic plan, it's a part of our process. So I'm going to share with you some examples to help understand, because it's a fairly complex process that we go through for value engineering, scope reduction, and project redesign. So it's for you to understand, as well as our constituents at home. So the examples are going to be real life examples, but they're all fictitious of how we do this. I want to make sure we understand how this works in a real environment. When we are strategically planning, there are certain aspects of a project that will happen. It's a project, we identify what that project is, we have an approved budget, preliminary scope, a bid process, the final scope, and then a final cost. So we're gonna give you a real life example. It is simplistic to help understand how this works in our everyday lives, and then we're gonna show you how we do this in construction. So the first one, again, it is simplistic, just to make sure we understand it. The first one is, let's say you were given the task of having an Italian-style dinner for 4 with leftovers for lunch. Your budget is $30. You come up with the idea that you can have lasagna. You go to the store and realize in order to do that, you'll spend $50. You go through the value engineering process and decide, no, I can't do lasagna, but instead I can do spaghetti and meatballs. I spend $30. I've not saved any money because my budget was $30. I spent $30. I still met the goal of an Italian-style dinner for 4 with leftovers for lunch. That's value engineering. In construction, let's say, and this is a fictitious project, this does not exist. Let's say that we had a project for exterior water feature at the front and rear entrance of Muscogee High School. You have $1 million for the budget. You decide you want to do a Vegas-style interactive water fountain. Right. The bids come back, and the bid is for $1.5 million. You go through the value engineering process and decide instead you'll do standard water fountains that still meets the intended purpose of the project, and you're within budget. Value engineering. You've not saved any money. You had $1 million budgeted, you spent $1 million. Value engineering. Scope reduction. That same Italian-style dinner for 4 with leftovers for lunch. However, you discover when you get to the grocery store, it'll cost you $60 for lasagna. You then decide that you're going to do spaghetti and meatballs, but for dinner only, no lunch. You reduced what you were going to do. In construction, that same concept. Exterior water feature, instead, is $2 million this time, so you decide that you're going to do the front entrance only. You reduced it. We would come to the board and explain that in order to remain within our budget, we're going to reduce the initial scope of the project. We've not saved money. We had a budget of $1 million. We will spend $1 million, but we changed the scope of the project. The most drastic one is project redesign. So in this scenario, you go to the grocery store and realize it's $75 for lasagna. So instead, you decide to serve chicken, rice, and vegetables in order to meet your $30 budget. In construction world, let's say the bid comes back at $3 million for those water features. You instead decide to do updated landscaping and a new monument sign. You still are under budget at $1 million. So you've not saved money, but instead you had a budget of $1 million, you spend $1 million. So this is what we do in construction. We do that to make sure that we are staying within our project budgets and how we respond to inflation. It's not a matter of saving money because we are still spending the intended dollars that were allotted for that project. As you all know, we have a very big project that we're working on that is impacted by construction. New elementary school number 8, impacted by inflation. So if you can imagine, based upon what we just learned, value engineering, scope reduction, or project redesign, what do you think is happening with new elementary school number 8? Our original budget was $25 million total. $20 million was dedicated towards construction. Our lowest bid came in at $34.9 million for construction only. We went through the value engineering process, and we thank very much for the vendors who bid for that project. We went extensively through the value engineering process, and we were able to reduce that overall budget significantly, but still not to the point that was at our original budget. That's because of a couple of things. In 2019 is when we developed the project projections. 2021 is when the board approved the $25 million budget, and you can see what's happened with inflation because of everything that's going on in the world, and we are not able to meet our original budget with inflation. So what do you think we've done based on what we've learned? Project redesign. That's where we are with new elementary school number 8. We provided new parameters, because that's a part of project redesign. The first new parameter is a fall 2024 delivery date. The second one is we want to align the design standards that were used for Dorothy Height Elementary. That's our newest elementary school. There are some design standards, as currently the new elementary school is designed, that are outside of that alignment with Dorothy Height. And so in the redesign process, we want to make sure that they're aligning with Dorothy Height. So we're consistent and equitable across the district, and it will help with our budget process. With this process, there's a new revised timeline that we're going to follow. We plan to present to you an update on the board on the redesign in fall 2022. We will bid the project in winter 2022. We anticipate presenting to you a vendor for approval in early 2023, and then, assuming that vendor is approved, breaking ground in 2023, again with that new parameter of a fall 2024 delivery date. That's where we are with the new elementary school number 8. This is new, hot off the presses, and so your current update in the agenda is not going to reflect this for new elementary school number 8. However, the next update for the next month will show that we're in project redesign, and we'll update that information for you on the report. Any questions?
I just have one question. Can you go back to the slide that talked about the project was $34 million? That was the approved amount. 32. Okay, 34 was the lowest bid.
The approved total budget is $25 million. Our lowest bid was $34.9 million, significantly over budget. Which is why even with the value engineering process, which I commend Ward and his team, as well as our vendors, they worked really hard to reduce that. That's a significant reduction, but it's still not close enough.
So we're looking at $36 or $32 million is going to be the cost to build this school?
So one of the reasons why we're going through the project redesign phase is because we want them to design it with the new parameters, and we'll have a new budget proposal. So we don't know at this point what the new budget.
Okay, so we have not voted on the new budget proposal.
Exactly.
Okay,
so what we will present to you in fall 2022 will be that update. Okay. Yep.
Any more questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, that's all for the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Cantrell. Ms. Williams, Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Finance has 9.01 under purchase exception A and B, which are for textbooks, films, videotapes, et cetera. You have 4 items before you. Are there any questions on any of these items? Seeing none, that takes us to 9.02. That is purchase exception F. This is from existing competitively bid contracts of the state or federal government. You have 5 items before you. That is for your firewall, some medical, replace gutters, gymnasium. Any questions on those? Seeing none, that takes us to purchase exception G under 9.03. This is professional services, and you have 4 items before you. I believe there's a question on one of those.
Yes, I was wondering if I could get a little more information on number 4. I'm not used to seeing, you know, additional funds going to an outside law firm, so some background.
And also, this is another reason, this particular item, why we need to put those notifications on, because there was an attachment for it. I turned you off, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, that's my question. It
It wasn't,
disappeared and I
yeah,
couldn't get
it's
to it.
not on there anymore. And
This is the item we talked about in executive session previously. So we can get you the information. We just didn't, typically we don't put this out.
Oh, it was under executive session
Yes.
content,
But I mean,
okay.
is this
Yes.
money,
But it's
so we have
still-
not spent this yet. This is something we need going forward?
I'm sorry?
Sorry. This is money we haven't spent yet. This is fees that we need going forward on one of our cases.
This is typically what we do. We pay for the legal service, and then this is like this is the authorization for our
Reimburse.
legal services.
Yeah.
Okay, I think,
I'll
You,
refresh
you
my
missed,
memory.
you missed the invoice. That's really, we need to turn that feature on so that
Yeah.
when something changes, it will alert us to pay attention.
yeah, because the question is correct, was asked of the chair. I didn't have the same information once it's gone through executive session and it is ready to be voted on, it needs to be made public.
Yeah.
If not, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong, Dr. Lewis.
I was going by what Greg Ellington had directed me, so I'm
Okay.
sorry. So that's why it was pulled off. so-
I'll get with
But
him
I'll-
then
I'll-
and find out, or, yeah, it sort of put me in a position unable to answer a fellow
Right.
board member on something on my committee report, that's all.
Okay, my
Yeah, I mean, if possible.
Yes.
If possible. I don't want to
Okay.
put us in a bad situation. Were there, did you have a question, Ms. Buckner? Okay. All right, thank you. If there is nothing else, that takes us to 9.04. This is your sole source and volatile purchases. These are your 4 items to include your tire changer and your oil and gas and a printer and an interface software. Any questions on those? Hearing none. Takes us to 9.05, and the Chattahoochee Valley Library System is busy. These are your purchase order changes. Gosh, my computer keeps disappearing. So you have 8 items before you. I believe 5 of those are for the library system. And then you have your voice over internet, your custodial service, and equipment repairs. Any other items? Or any other questions? I'm sorry. Ms. McCray?
I just wanted to get a little more clarification on the one for American Facility Services, the increase for the custodial services. Sorry, Mr. Odom, I should have probably forewarned you to stay up front.
Hope you have your pedometer on.
Oh, sorry, yep, there we go. On the American Facility Services, that was to the day porters that we had around here to wipe down for the pandemic relief. It was additional funding for that. So we had to increase the PO, which we now that we're out of the pandemic, we have stopped that service.
For a while.
We just had to cover the increase for this service.
Okay, and that's part of what mine was. This was to make up for money that had already been spent, or if this was something we were doing going forward.
That's correct, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so it's already done.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Thank you. Is that all, Ms. McCray?
Folding up my sheets.
Oh, wow. Okay, that takes us to 9.06. This is your competitively bid purchases, and there are 7 items before you. There's a library foundation item, there's painting for there's painting for the schools and facilities. There's energy recovery unit, elevator inspection and maintenance, cooling tower maintenance, bleacher maintenance, and then, of course, our wide area network. I was stunned that VirtueCom was not on here this month. I feel like there's something missing. Are there any questions on any of those? All right, moving to 9.07 and 9.08. These are your monthly reports and your monthly adjustments to the budget to in our federal programs. Are there any questions on any of those items? Seeing none, there, last but not least, and my favorite, are the donations. Our donations this month will be on our homepage, but they do total $27,608.45. And I will tell you that the PowerPoint is 16 pages of donations to our programs, our schools, our services, from private corporations, individuals, PTOs, anonymous donors. It's across the board, and it is a true testament to this community's generosity and their full-fledged support for the public education system that we have. And that ends my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next, we have some information items. Dr. Lewis, you're gonna cover these information items. You got the FY23 budget parameters.
Well, these are the ones we approved last month, so those are still on there. The rest of these are, we have the Teacher of the Year top 3. We'll be presenting those to our board on next Monday, rather. Outstanding First-Year Teacher will also be on there. Library Media Specialist of the Year, so a lot of awards coming out this time of the year. Proclamation Month for the military child. This is the month we recognize all of our military students and their families. And then Proclamation for Library Month also this month.
And then you see 10.02 is Delta Sigma Theta Sorority will be adding to that donation list with the presentation next month.
Then just a couple other bits of information to share. I shared with the board earlier today in an email. You may not have gotten a chance to read it yet, but Senate Bill 14, known as the Unmasked Georgia Students Act, was passed by the legislature. And just to remind everyone that with the uptick of cases, there may be questions coming about if we're going to be going back to masks and that kind of thing. And based on this Senate bill passage, it prohibits school districts or personnel from enacting any kind of mask mandate. So just want to make sure that everyone knows that up front. So we're putting that out there in the public so everybody's aware of that. So they don't ask you, me, or anybody else. That's the law. So with that. And then a reminder, we are coming up at the end of the month with the deadline for registering for the summer learning experience that was so successful last year. We want to encourage everyone that plans to participate. Please do so. Get registered by the end of the month, because that's how we determine the number of teachers we need, supplies we need to order, all of that. So it's critically important. We cannot extend that deadline. So by the end of this month, if you are planning on having children involved in the summer learning experience, please make sure they do so online. Okay?
Also, the registration is going on for the summer learning, which is critical. But the school year, the regular school year, in-person schooling is also going on, as well as the virtual school. The virtual school academy. All of those registrations are going on, and they have critical timeline dates. And so with all of the communications that's going out, I do want to say we do communicate very well and quite effectively. But it is talking about 3 different registrations that's going on. So hopefully parents aren't ignoring all of the email communication that's going out, because it is separate communications about 3 separate registrations. Summer school, summer learning experience, the virtual school, and the regular school year is all conducted online. And also, of course, they can go to their school for assistance, to their child's school, to help them if they're having any technology challenges. Thursday, April 14th, board members, we have our whole board training in this room, starting at 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. 4 to 7, our whole board training, Thursday. Couple of days. Anything else? I take that as we're ready to go. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Y'all have a good evening.